my second DNN Connect event, and I got to tell you, I go to the ones in the US too, and you guys definitely smoke the US people as far as locations go. So for those of you that I haven't had the opportunity to meet yet, my name is Andy Tryba, and bought DNN just over a year and a half ago or so now. And I always enjoy coming to these events because, you know, the community element of it is the most valuable part of DNN, and ensuring that we continue to go drive that as much as we can and rejuvenate that as much as we can is super important to not only, of course, DNN Corp, but then obviously continue the community as a whole. But the first thing that I wanted to do, and if everyone could thank the organizers here. Having personally done some of these in the past, I know it's crazy hard to get these things together, right? Not only pulling everyone together, but then arranging the location, arranging the hotels, arranging the food, you know, random people picking on you on Facebook, on your app. So there's all kinds of things that they end up doing, and it's tons of work. And it's obviously, in this particular case, for the community, right, which makes it even more special. So thank you for doing that. So what I thought I'd do here is talk a little bit about, you know, my view of the last year and a half or so, and talk about, you know, the things that have worked and perhaps some of the things that haven't worked, and then from there kind of go into the vision of where we're going. And it was interesting when I was kind of pulling this together, you know, this question came to mind, right? Because prior to buying DNN, and it's interesting because you go through all of the diligence on the financials and what have you, the relationship with the community was not a question that I had asked. It turns out that I needed to, right? And because one of the things that was unfortunate at the time, and I know that many of you guys have felt this, is that this was actually the word that I believe characterized the relationship between, you know, I guess DNN version 2.0. I think you can call it Sean's era, DNN 1.0, and then there's another era after that, and we'll call this, you know, version 3.0. I think Sean and crew did a good job of obviously driving the community as a whole, and then I believe that, you know, business terms got into a bit of the way of driving the segmentation strategy and what have you, which drove a lot to this term here. And if you guys recall, you know, last time I was here, I showed you this chart, right, which is basically the DNN searches via Google over time. And obviously you see, you know, the excitement early on peaking and then going down substantially over time. And the question that I had posed at the time was whether or not we collectively, as a community, considered that bubble an asset or a liability, a la legacy, and whether or not we viewed this tail end of it as, well, does that mean it's actually dead, or is it actually an opportunity to go up and to the right? And I'm obviously a big passionate believer that you actually can recover communities as a whole, but it takes a bunch of effort to go and make that happen, right? And several of us within the community, including Sean, got together and said, well, you know, what are the things that we need to go and do to rebuild this community as a whole, to so many of the great efforts that have gone on over time? And we came up with a chart that kind of looks a little bit like this. Actually, this is an actual slide, right? Where we said, hey, these are the things that we need to do to go and rebuild the community, right? We need to obviously establish trust, because there was a lot of water under the bridge, per se, on different promises that were made that weren't kept, and what have you. There was a need to ensure that there is this robust partner community, because at the end of the day, you know, all of this doesn't exist without some type of partner community. The people in the community felt like they had the ability to contribute, right? If you guys recall, you know, pull requests were basically dead prior to us purchasing the company and what have you. So, you know, people that did submit them, they were waiting years to even hear back. So why would you submit anything if you were never hearing back, right? There had to be these monetization opportunities for all of the various players. Because though many of us are passionate about the open source systems as a whole, you know, there still has to be monetization at the other end for the partners to continue to want to contribute towards the open source world. And then, of course, you had to have that customer success element of it. You had to be able to drive the awareness within the community. And then, you needed this continual replenishment of the players, right? Of the reseller community, of the integrator community, but also of the developer community, right? And many of the developers, of course, they didn't necessarily have the tools even necessary to continue to contribute. So many of us, within the community looked at this and said, hey, how do we go and turn this around? And the first thing, as many of you guys that run your own companies know, is that you appoint great people into positions to go and make this happen. Right? This is a community effort. This isn't a DNN Corp effort, right? In that this is all about how do we bring the best and the brightest together to go and drive this level of leadership across the board. And these guys, of course, you guys know here, you got 3 out of the 4 kind of sitting in that corner over here. But they've been doing an unbelievable job driving all of the elements needed to go and turn the curve, right? And certainly, there's tons of work to be done yet. But when I think of the awareness that Will and crew are doing, and I think he talked a bit more about the .org site, whether it be a lot of the partner stuff that David's doing, or all of the developer things that Peter's doing. And certainly, although Mitch couldn't be here, I mean, there's obviously tons and tons of work going on within the technology advisory group. And it's really on the back of, not only these folks leading, but then all of the additional contributors underneath that then start driving that curve back up and to the right. And the other thing that I had said at the time, and I still absolutely hold this to be true, is that I will mobilize all of the things within DNN Corp to help out the community as a whole. Right, in that, if there's resources that we can apply, if there are things that we can help out with, then we certainly can do that. But we're going to do that as a peer, not as a dictator, right? In that, this is one of those scenarios where, we had a bit of a decision to make, right? It's like, do we actually, grab it all and drive to a much larger DNN Corp and a smaller community model, or is there a way that we can actually invert that? And actually even have a smaller DNN Corp and have a larger community as a whole. And that is the route that we were going, and that's why we actually consider ourselves peers as opposed to owning all of these things. Now, that was a little bit uncomfortable, to tell you the truth. And I know that some of the early advisory group meetings that we had, I think it was an adjustment. Right? They're saying, hey guys, no, why isn't Corp doing X, Y, or Z? Right? Why isn't Corp making this decision on where the roadmap should be? And we intentionally, though it was legitimately painful, we didn't answer. Right? We didn't. We were like, no, we're peer guys. We're not going to make the decisions on behalf of the community. The platform roadmap is not going to be dependent on the Evoke roadmap. We are going to actually go and ensure that the community is empowered to exist, whether or not DNN Corp was even there. And that was a tough decision because in many ways we are again jumping onto the same boat, right? As opposed to just kind of running on our own. But that then also made us ensure that we have equal stake on what all of the things that occur within the platform world, versus just going off and building our own product and saying, okay, whatever, the platform stuff is behind that. So we got back and we said, hey, okay, how do we go and do that, right? And how do we go and ensure that we can help contribute and empower the community, but not get in the way and not have to be this dictator type of model. So these are the things that we had come up with, and then that we did. Right, so Sean asked us, hey, let's you guys need to join the .NET Foundation, right? And let's go push it towards a true open source community. So yes, so we did that, right? We needed to ensure that that we empower the community to be able to drive the roadmap, and the technology advisory group does that, right? And this isn't if you guys recall in the past, it was very much. Evoke is the platform, or is the roadmap, and then there's segmentation, and here are the things that we're going to allow you to do within the platform world. That doesn't exist anymore, right? We've given the technology advisory group and the full admin status on GitHub, right? So the organization's can go and determine who is admin and who can actually get added in, right? We gave full access to all of the security elements, where we don't necessarily all just own it on our side of the world, right? We bestowed the owner status of the NuGet repositories. We shared the domain name, right? I know that that was a big tension point in the past, right? We're like, no, absolutely, the community should have the .org domain. Why shouldn't that be the case, right? And then it should be fully owned by the community. And of course, we'll help, of course, contribute to the documentation and whatever else needs to be, but why shouldn't we, right? And then we also took our DNN.com website, and also, which was, oh, by the way, it was a vote website. It wasn't really a DNN platform website, right? It wasn't holistic in nature. So, we quickly just changed that. Like, guys, let's have it be holistic and talk about the community as a whole. And of course, by the way, obviously the way that our company monetizes it is that there is a 4K version. Let's make sure we link to that. Let's make sure that when people go to that, it's holistic in nature. It's not just a brochure for Evoke, right? And then you see a lot of the other things that we did there, right? We certainly have various community members come in and talk to even the Evoke customers, talking about the platform as a whole. I'll talk a bit more about the store. We've done actually a decent amount of investment on coming out with a new store. But then we also donated a bunch of the IP to open source, right? Whether that be EBS, the frameworks, a bunch of documentation, and a bunch of the historical data and what have you. And the reason we did this again was to be peers, right? Is that if we continue to just own all this, it was this hierarchical type of relationship, right? And that I don't believe that is the right thing to do for a community to thrive. Right? I believe that we collectively need to go and bring the additional players in, and it's by doing things like this that go and make it happen. Now, of course, by no means does that mean that we don't continue to contribute as a whole, right? Obviously we've got a big stake in this, and we build everything on top of the platform world. So whether it be the testing side, I was in a great session with Peter and Tima's crew on testing, right? This is one of those hard things in open source communities as a whole. So obviously, we've got tons of tests that we've written, several thousand tests that we've written on our side of the world, but I just learned that, hey, by the way, we don't actually expose a lot of that. Right? Well, why not, right? Let's make sure that we take the platform tests that we do, and let's make sure that we post it out there so that people can just reuse those tests, whether it be manual tests or automated tests, and make sure that it's very clear on what's being tested internally on our side of the world, which of course we run all of these on a regular basis. Over the last couple of weeks alone, we've done over 9,000 tests, right? And same deal with the bugs and what have you, right? As we continue to fix the bugs, we're working on both sides and ensuring that we have good communication, which I actually think that we do have good communication, but sometimes things break. So ensuring that the teams are there working closely together is really, really important. And all of this empowerment has been, you have to be able to measure it somehow. And the key metric that I look at on measuring is how many accepted pull requests are actually coming in from the community and what's going on. And this is kind of interesting chart here. So if I were to actually draw this further left, it basically would be a flat line, right? And then there was 40 some odd pull requests. Actually, it was more than that. These are the ones that we approved. That were sometimes we're sitting for years. That were like, guys, that is disrespectful to the developers that actually contribute to that. Like, we have to go and either say yes or no, and if it's yes, get it into the platform as a whole. So we did that, and that's what you see this spike here, which is fine. But what is more interesting is actually what occurs to the right of it, right? So you see this steady trend going up and to the right of people contributing to the platform as a whole, and contributing a lot of time and energy, right? I mean, because it is not trivial, as you guys know, to put time and effort, and everyone here has their own day jobs, right? To be able to contribute to open source is a serious effort. But it's great to see this trend, and this is the trend that I'm hoping to continue up and to the right. And these are, this is a list of the accepted pull requests over time. And it takes tremendous effort to do this. You see a lot of the people that are sitting here in the room, right? In the amount of work that is done to go and make this platform as healthy as possible and continue to innovate over time. Because as you guys know, there's obviously some big technology transitions that we have to collectively work on. The work to the .NET Core side of the world is a good example, and some of the work that Andrew has done recently to go and help push things towards that direction, and others, right? So it takes tremendous effort to go make this happen, but this is really, in my mind, part of the key elements of the technology side of the world to go make it happen. Because at the end of the day, that's what drives this, right? Where it's this roadmap, and these are just the releases that we've had since the last time we were in Limerick. And obviously there's tons of work that goes on to go and make that happen, both on the platform side and the Vogue side. And I think that some of the folks might have mentioned this, is that we're even decoupling that even more, right? Where it isn't going to be a model where the Vogue is necessarily stopping the releases of the platform side of the world. We're letting those two actually go on two different planes, and it's actually up to the Vogue side, in my mind, to keep up, right, and to build our platform on our product on top of the platform. Because ideally, we're in a model where there's so many great community members that are contributing towards the platform that's actually been accelerating at a faster rate than the commercial product that sits on top of it. And I look forward to the day that's actually the case. But the awareness side of it is also really, really important, right? And I'm super excited. And well, did you actually publish the site yet, or is it?
Yes.
We announced it yesterday. Great, awesome. So I was super excited about that. So when the team came and said, hey, we want to go and do this effort, I think it's fantastic, right? Because when you go into the commercial side and trying to find a bunch of these things is confusing, right? And there needs to be a community-driven site, and I think that is awesome. And it's obviously tons of work by Will and the awareness team to go and make that happen, of course. But I think that's great. One thing that I talked about last year that we didn't do, though, is actually revamp the store, right? Where I'm a big believer that today's store is terrible. It's difficult to use. It's got all these strange things going on with it. And it's unclear on the validation elements of the various modules and what have you. And it needs a revamp, and I think it's needed a revamp for some time. It's just no one's ever really done it. But in order to be able to have that element that I mentioned on the monetization of all the players, you have to have a robust marketplace to be able to go and make it happen. Where whether it be platform folks going in there and buying modules for platform, whether it be Vogue customers going in and buying modules for Vogue, that site has to be there. So I did want to give you guys an update on that. So later on this year, we actually will be launching the new version of the DNN store itself. We made a decision, actually, I believe, in Limerick, on the provider to use and what have you. So we negotiated those terms. I'm paying for it, so that it's not a community cost or anything like that. But we'll use it collectively on both sides of the world, and we're hoping to launch that later on this year. So I think that this is where your feedback will be great too as we go and continue to develop this out. We're using an off-the-shelf product, so it's it's got all of the what I would consider to be best-in-class shopping cart type of models and like that in there. But I think this is going to be really important for us to collaborate collectively on, because again, this isn't an Evoke store, right? This is a DNN store, and ensuring that all the various members of this community here that monetize that or use those, I think is really, really important. And then ideally we can get the right situation in place where I know that people basically sideload today. Right? I know I've met with a lot of module providers that are like, I don't even post my stuff onto the DNN store. I just kind of work with my customers on that. And that's obviously not good for the community as a whole. And I'd like to get everything on there. But I also believe that there is a certain amount of validation that we have to go and make it successful there. Right? Where we don't necessarily want the characteristics of the full iOS store, but we don't also want to be all the way on the other end like the Android store. Right? I believe that some level of segmentation, some level of validation is necessary, and I think that that's something that we're going to have to work through. But at least we're moving forward with the revamp of the actual store itself. And then I'd love to form a small sub-team even within the EAG as a whole to be able to then go and figure out what all the elements that we need to do here. Okay, so let me, so that was kind of my look back over the last year, a year and a half or so. And again, I feel like we've come a long way as a community. And again, I measure it via a pull request, but I also measure it just by the intangible feelings, right? And I hopefully you guys feel the same, where it feels like there is a certain amount of additional energy within the community as a whole, and an additional excitement that's there. And we need to continue to ride that wave to bring in new players, right? We need more developers that come in and are excited to jump on top of the framework itself. We need new resellers and integrators to come into the community. We need to go and drive new module vendors, right? So that there's even more robust community in the whole. But it's through, no one wants to do that if the community's dead, right? But if there's excitement there and it feels like it's going up and to the right, then they will indeed come back, and I think that's kind of where we're at. So let me transition a little bit kind of on my view of where we're taking the DNN Corp side of the world, and I think that there's going to be a lot of analogies on the platform as a whole here. And then we'll do a bunch of questions, and I'm happy to do Q&As as much as you guys want here. So my view is that now that we are back on the trajectory that I think is appropriate from a overall engagement perspective and what have you, and you look at also Microsoft's transition, because Microsoft, if you recall, rode that same chart as we have, but then has come back nicely, across the board, which I think is great. So I believe that we are in that position where we can do the same. Right? There's obviously tons that we have to do to go make that happen, but I believe that we should be talking about the growth of DNN as a whole and the things that need to occur. Because when you look at the CMS space in aggregate, right, and obviously there's a lot of other things that DNN is used for, but we'll just use CMS to start with. This is a chart of kind of growth from 2015 to 2019, and you see kind of obviously the big player WordPress is still growing. But then you see this massive hyper growth by some of the other smaller CMS players, which perhaps not as small as much anymore, but with Squarespace and Wix and Weebly and Crew. And those guys have been growing at a triple-digit CAGRs basically over the last 3, 4, 5 years. So there's no reason in my mind. I don't believe that the CMS space in aggregate is done. Right, I don't believe that it's a mature market and no other players have done it. But what you see when you look at what is driving the elements of the hypergrowth, I believe that it comes down to these key things. One is extreme ease of use. Right, when you go onto a Squarespace page, I mean, like, you don't have to be technical. You click a couple buttons, you got some templates, boom, you're up and going. It's super easy to use. Right, and same deal with WordPress and others, right? And I've heard this argument like, oh, well, DNN's meant for a more sophisticated user or whatever else it may be, and I don't believe that at all. If you look at the web pages that are on WordPress and what have you, you have sophisticated users on that side too. It's not we somehow have some other kind of niche of different users, but the ease of use matters a ton, which I believe that we seriously lack today. 2 is robust templates, right? It is super hard today to get things up and going and get a great looking site and what have you. You have to bring in the experts to go and make that happen. And then the easy integration of all these other modules, whether you're talking about bringing in some of the e-commerce modules, some of the payment modules and what have you. And when I look across these 3 folks that have been growing massively, that's what they all have in common. Right? And they're largely the same. They obviously do a bunch of awareness, advertising, and what have you, but the core platform is just super easy to use. It's almost instantaneous, and any SMB can kind of go and grab one of these and make it happen. And in full disclosure, I use Squarespace, right? Where like I started a school about a year and a half ago, and what have you, and I had a decision to make, right? It's like, do I use DNN or do I use Squarespace? And it's pretty bad when I'm standing up on stage here and I'm saying I use Squarespace. Right? Something is fundamentally wrong at that point in time on our ease of use and what have you, if that's the case. And those are things that we got to go and change. So that's it. These are the main factors that we're focusing on. right? And I think that the platform side of it will go hand in hand with this. But I don't want to, again, because I'm a peer on the platform side, but I own the other side. I can talk about this from my perspective, but we obviously have to make a decision collectively on the platform side on whether these are the vectors that we're going to go on or not. But it really comes down to exactly the same thing that those folks are doing, right? I have no shame in looking at how people are growing and jumping on that same vectors, right, of ease of use, the templates, and then the integrations. And then if I were to throw something else on top of it, I would say, and then the step function elements that we bring into the platform that those guys can't touch, which is around the Prime program, which I'll talk a bit more about. So that's exactly what we're doing, right? Is like literally, we are looking at WordPress and Squarespace and others, and we're saying, great, how do we basically just clone the UI? Right? How do we just make it super easy for these folks to be able to take the hosted version, say, and just kind of click a button and you're easy to go, right? Like we don't need the complexity in there, and we're dramatically simplifying and looking at the ease of use, and that comes through different things, right? Easy to do layout and design, easy to do, the hand-coded small CSS that ends up being on the side, easy to take these out-of-box templates and just apply them. Right? I mean, these are things that every modern website nowadays absolutely needs, and things that we have to have as part of the platform. And part of, when I say platform, I refer to the evokes out here. But these are core things that absolutely have to be there. And again, that doesn't mean that there's not room for the integration partners, or it doesn't mean that there's not room for folks that build on top of it. But there's no reason why you can't take 80% of it, and then that might be good for a bunch of folks, and then people that want customization on top of that, great, awesome, let's go do that. But you shouldn't have to start from zero. And of course, many of you guys that have built successful companies on the integration side, you have your own versions, right? You have some templates that you basically apply, and then you guys do the other 8 to 20% anyway, and that's kind of what we're referring to here. The other thing that I'm a big believer on is having a super robust API and integration strategy that ensures that all of the various things that people want to plug in, they can do so, right? So these are things that we've done already. Whether you want live chat, you can kind of plug that in. Whether you want some marketing via HubSpot and what have you, you can plug that in. Whether you want to be a little bit more flexible and use things like Zapier or the e-commerce side of the world, but just continue to move forward. And obviously, you're talking about the CRM space, you're talking about the authentication space. These are common plugins that people want on their sites. And I'd love to get your guys' feedback also, particularly the folks that do a lot of work with the Evoke side, on what other APIs and integrations can we actually work on here, because I believe that this is the easy low-hanging fruit where you can just kind of go and make these things happen, but people ask for it constantly, and why don't we have that, right? And obviously, a bunch of the other companies that I've that purchased, like SLI, which is a e-commerce search engine, or Business Apps, which is a mobile templated app company. I want to go make all of those work easily too, but it's not limited to that by any means. But the whole point of having these APIs is super, super important. And let me give you an example of this, right? So obviously mobile is super important. There's no world that mobile is going away, and it's not just responsiveness on your phone if you're looking at a browser. It's actually bringing in functionality that customers are actually looking for. And there's a company that we purchased called Business Apps that does exactly this. Right? They basically make and utilize progressive web apps as well as native iOS and Android to be able to give restaurants, and that's just one use case, but restaurants' ability to do ordering via their app, right? Be able to do coupon, be able to track loyalty and what have you. And all of these things are things that we should have absolutely as part of the DNN platform, right? Where if any of your customers want mobile, you should be able to just enable that. Right? Versus, I understand that the Xamarin side of the world, it's hard, right? Most people don't need custom mobile apps, right? I mean, just like a website, most of what's in these apps are largely the same, right? If you look at, the login and the user sign up, the single sign on to either Google or Facebook, a lot of these restaurant apps, or a lot of these banking apps, whatever it may be. Like a lot of the functionality is largely the same. So starting from scratch every time doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And having these simple templates do, because that covers, again, 80 or 90% of the use cases, and then you can tap on the rest. So I'm going to give you, Ash recorded a little demo for me, and let's see here. Does this work, by the way? I don't know if...
Yeah, press the button for a little while and then it comes
Okay.
But you can get, you want sound?
Yeah, well I was... This works. I'll just put this next to my PC here. Yeah. You guys all hopefully know Ash. Well, maybe it doesn't like that. Great. We'll see how loud this is. But I'm going to play a little demo here of Ash and.
Let me show you an easy way of adding value to your existing DNN website by adding a native iOS app, a native Android app, and progressive web app. Without writing a single line of code, we are going to be using business apps. Business apps comes free as part of DNN Prime offering. Business apps is the #1 app builder for small businesses. You can pretty much build apps for any industry, including restaurant, community, real estate, schools, beauty. So let's begin. Let's have a look at this website built with Depot. It's a typical restaurant website, a bistro food with a couple of menu options on the top, home about the menu with perhaps a PDF of their current menu. What they want to do now is to open up online ordering, including push notification, e-commerce, delivery times, and all the bells and whistles that comes with online ordering that we're used to today. It's a two-step process now. You go into business apps and build the native as well as the progressive web app using drag and drop controls. And on the DNN side, you drop a business apps connector module and wire them together. That's it. On the business app side, I can use the intuitive UI to update the design and look and feel of my app. Example, home screen, carousel image. I can change the navigation as I like. I can also change the global styling. And when I'm ready to build my app, I can go into the build section and select one of the 50 features available. I am going to, for this demo, I'm going to use the full ordering. Now, within full ordering, I have several choices to pick from. Including variety of ordering services that are available that I can hook directly into. I can also hook up to a payment provider of my choice, including PayPal, Stripe. I can also go in and edit the menu and go deeper into that and set up the prices and the sizes and whatnot, and a variety of settings that I can choose from. When I'm ready to publish my app, I simply select my target environment, iOS, Android, phone, progressive web app, and simply click on submit. The progressive web app is available right away. The iOS and Android may take a few days depending on how long Apple or Google takes to review and approve your app. On the inside, we're going to create a new page and add the business app connector module. In that module, you will set two things. One is the URL of your app in the Apple App Store, and then the URL of the app in the Google Play Store, and also the URL of the progressive web app. Now let's come back to this restaurant website built on a boat. Here is the page order now, which contains this module, which we configured just now. This module now has the smarts to detect whether you're coming from a desktop website. In that case, it will take you to the progressive website, and where you can go ahead and place the order. But if you happen to be on the mobile side, what it'll do is that it'll open the mobile app instead. And if the mobile app is not there, it will take you to the App Store for you to download and install. And once you're in the mobile store, you can go and browse through the menu, and the item that you like, you can go ahead and click on it and do the checkout. And as soon as that is done, what will happen is that you, as the business owner, will get either a push notification or a message here in business app that, hey, the order is placed. Now you are able to go ahead and process the order.
Great. So I use this as an example of of bringing in what I would consider to be step function roadmap that's over and above what I would consider to be the linear CMS type of roadmap, right? So ease of use and templates and things like that, I consider that on the linear side. But enabling your customers to have a quick ability to do mobile ordering and be able to have native apps and what have you is something that I'm not sure that the DNN regular roadmap would necessarily ever get to from a priority perspective. And same deal with a bunch of the other functions that I'll talk a bit more about here. Which leads me to my next point on Prime. And some of you guys have heard me talk about this, and some of you guys haven't, so I'll do a little bit of a refresher, but then I'll go into a little bit more of the details here. So the notion around DNN and just my Prime program as a whole is really hovered around the consumer buying behavior. If you think about the way that we all used to say, buy one or two songs from iTunes, we no longer do that. I don't have iTunes anymore right now. You just, in Apple Music or Spotify, you get the whole entire library. Or you used to go and buy one or two movies, say, but now you just go to, you have a Netflix and you get the whole entire library or Apple Video, right? And what this does is that it changed the consumer mentality from this a la carte onesie twosie type of a model to, hey, you know what? I want my subscription to get better and better, infinite value over time, right? Amazon's the same way, of course. Like you pay your in the U.S. $129 a year, and you're excited because they just throw more and more into it. You get this infinite value that accrues, and therefore you're excited to actually pay for that subscription every year and what have you, because it's real time, it's super easy, it's ongoing. And but if you look at most SaaS companies, particularly in the B2B space, like it is not like that. It's far from it. There was a study recently that said that the typical mid-size business has 40 or 50 different SaaS companies that they're paying for. And they're all these modular, just tiny little pieces of the puzzle, and sometimes they talk and sometimes they don't talk, right? But I believe that fundamentally that this changes, right? Where I believe that whether it be through consolidation or whether that be through things like what we're trying to do, is you actually have one subscription that covers a huge variety of different business needs, and your expectation is that continues to get better and better and better, right? And that's exactly what we're trying to build on the Prime side. And what we have today, where basically Vote customers, they get all of the other companies that I buy included as part of the DNN subscription, right? We're just chatting, with the folks saying, great. So if you need enterprise search, for example, I just took a company private called SLI Systems, right? That is one of the leaders in e-commerce search, right? That's just included as part of DNN. If you want mobile, and it's just included as part of DNN, right? So because we're building out this portfolio of infinite value is what we're trying to get to. So that enables not only the customers to be excited about that purchasing that Evoke license, because they know that it's going to continue to get better over time, not only in the linear fashion but on the step function side of the world. But it also enables the integrators and resellers within the community to be able to go and drive different elements of value, right? Where you're no longer just talking about, hey, let me build your website. Now you're talking about, hey, let me go talk to you about mobile. Hey, let me go talk to you about your e-commerce search. Let me go talk to you about your help desk solutions. Let me go talk to you about your project management solutions, et cetera, right? Your conversation gets a whole lot more strategic than simply having one thing that you're actually selling to them. And because I basically am offering it free to the customers, you guys get to do the same, right? Where you get to offer it to your customers and then build your additional services on top of that, much like Evoke today, but on a much broader scale, right? And we've seen customers adopt this in volumes. A, because it's free, but B, because it offers real solutions, right? So this is Gold Shim, for example, right? They were, they were using Freshdesk, I think is what it was. They were paying, I would say it was like $80,000 a year for Freshdesk, right? And they switched over to Kayako, which is basically an equivalent help desk, and they were able to rip out that $80K. And our discussions with Gold Shim are very different, right? Because now they're using 2 or 3 of our products, and we have a holistic discussion with the senior management there versus just one particular spot solution. And the other thing that it does is that it drives massive stickiness, right? And the reason why economically this makes sense is that having one more user on any software is marginal in cost, as you guys all know. But the value of maintaining that customer and reducing churn is significantly high, because customer acquisition cost, of course, is so high. So therefore, if you can have these folks starting to use 2 or 3 of your products now all of a sudden the stickiness is substantially higher than it was before, and therefore it makes tons of economic sense on our side of the world. So that's what we're doing, is we're building this, what I would consider to be this SMB portfolio. Think of the SMB Netflix model, where you get all these various licenses of software in there, of all the different things that we're buying, whether that be, again, if you need a CMS, because we're going the other way too, right? It's so good because there's a bunch of people that don't use DNN today. Bring them into the DNN community, right? Because now they get to get that for free if, say, they're a FogBugs customer. So these are just an example of some of the companies that a lot of companies are using today because they're horizontal in nature. Right? People want live chat on their website. There's a DNN integration. Quick, boom, easy to go, right? The mobile side of it, like I showed you, and others, right? And we've set up this app store where customers can actually learn about that, as well as you guys can go learn on it. And the whole point of that is basically we will continue to build out our library, and we're going to do it at a pretty rapid pace, right? So this is the goals that I have towards my team. Right, so the ESW/Think3 is roughly $1 billion fund or so, most of the companies are anywhere in the $5 to $10 million range is what we're buying. So we're targeted by 1 a week for the remainder of this year, move into 2 a week next year, move into 1 a day in 2021, business day, so 200, right? So, and the reason I'm doing this is that, I'm trying to build out this library, because Netflix is only good if you like some of the movies in there, right? Now, you don't have to like horror films, you don't have to like the whole entire portfolio, but if there has to be enough in there. It's like app stores, right? There has to be enough in there that you like, and we're going to be doing this on a rapid pace. Now, I've got no line of sight yet on how we actually do 1 a day, but that's basically kind of what we're going to. But certainly, we can do certainly do 1 a week. So, and this is just a quick little insight on how we actually do this. So we actually had to create this virtual data room, because any of you guys that have sold companies or bought companies, obviously everyone's got their own data structures. It's completely unstructured, actually. So we actually have a site that people actually upload all of their AR customer information. They upload a bunch of their support information, upload a bunch of their HR information, what have you. We do a bunch of analytics on that. And then we literally, it's almost automated, not quite automated yet, where we will literally spit out a bid for these companies, and then actually do a binding LOI that they can then accept. And then we have all that information, and then we automatically start the import process to be able to hook it up into our various tools and what have you. And then we do a bunch of analysis on that based on, here's your ARR that's actually what you claim versus actually what your Salesforce information says, which is always, seems to be like a 6 to 9% delta between the two. Same deal with retention. We look at all of their engineering tickets on how much it actually costs them to fix a bug, really, and the speed in which they were done and what have you, so we can overlay that to ours, because we want to be able to run each one of these companies better than the previous company was doing within 12 months. And the way that we also do that is kind of this piece too, right? We do tons of knowledge transfer. We do support transfer. We basically match up teams one-to-one, because most of the time we transition a lot of the folks out of the companies here. So I just want to give you a little bit of insight into kind of where we're taking, I would say, the company as a whole, right? DNN is obviously a major component of that because it goes horizontal in nature, but all of the DNN customers get to massively benefit from this. In that, again, it's not there's no world that the DNN would have gone into project management and been a Jira equivalent, for example, which is what FogBugs is. Right, it just doesn't occur. So there's all these various elements of it that just infinite increase in time, and that's also what drives my excitement if we could get the DNN community on the open source side of it, and then we could get all these APIs that can plug all these, not only these companies in, but whatever the industry leader is, if we can drive the ease of use, that makes it super easy. Now all of a sudden you're starting to talk about changes in the trajectory of that Google chart, where it's not it's not just us versus WordPress or us versus Squarespace, who those guys can obviously innovate on their own pace. It's now we're bringing a completely different game to play here that those guys they can't match, right? So I believe that we're set up for success, but it takes the entire community to go and do this, and it takes doing it now, right? And we have the momentum on our side of it, so now is the time to actually go and accelerate that, because we know it's not done, right? And again, as I mentioned earlier, and this is my last slide before Q&A, is we will continue to empower the community as much as you guys want, right? Where if there's one thing that hopefully you took away from the last year and a half of owning it, is that A, we live up to our word, but B, that we will absolutely give the community tons of freedom and tons of power, because we believe that is actually incredibly valuable, right? There's tons of different CMSs I could want, but there's the value of DNN is the community as a whole, and the innovation vector that can actually go and drive. So I'm super excited for that, and so our DNN strategy, it hasn't changed, but I believe that with these things we can go and make that happen. So that's it. So I'm happy to do Q&A from here, but thank you very much. All right, what questions do I have?
Since 1.5 years, DNN or Evoke is now in the Prime project. Can you measure how many new customers are using Evoke because of that?
I don't know that I have the number off the top of my head, but when I look at the overall Evoke business, it's healthy in one regard and not as healthy in another regard. Right. One is that we do have a lot of new logos coming in, which is good. And I don't know if they're coming in because of the energy in the community, or I don't know if they're coming in because of necessarily the Prime side of the world. But that's the good part. The bad part though is that the churn is still a little bit higher than I would want. The Q2 churn, I want to say that the gross retention, I want to say it was like 70% or something like that. So 30% of the customers that were supposed to renew that quarter didn't renew. Your typical good software company will have a 90% gross retention. So when you're in the 70 side of the world, it is that is usually in poor category. Now, when I look at the reasons why a lot of those folks that have actually transitioned, a lot of them actually have not left the DNN world, they've actually gone to the platform side of the world. So in one sense, I'm okay with that in the near term, because I know that I'll be able to get a lot of those folks back versus them going to a WordPress or something else. But definitely, I'm taking near-term pain to drive platform in that particular space versus be able to do a bunch of deals. I don't try to do pricing to go win those deals and things like that. So I don't have the exact number, but hopefully that gives you a little bit of a perspective on the business as a whole. Now the corp is actually in good shape from an overall cost structure perspective, what have you, and I guess there's not too much information, but from a profitability perspective, it's fine. It's actually made more money in the last year than it has throughout the history of DNN. But so I'm fine with the near-term side of it, knowing that we'll bring it back. Other questions? Yep.
Who's championing the store? Because I think, especially from the community here, there will be some needs that really need to be looked into that probably that person will be aware of.
Yep. So Clint has been the main person that's been working with the vendor and what have you. But I think we need a more holistic approach, right? We got Clint and Mel on that side of the world that's kind of working with them, but it'd be good to have maybe a sub-team within the community that helps go and drive that. Because even though we're paying the bill, like we want to make sure that it has the functionality needed, that you guys are excited for it. Like the last thing we want to do is put a bunch of money into the store that we built for the community as a whole, and it not meet the needs, right? So let's certainly talk to that. And I don't know if from the EAG side, if we can kind of, I don't know if David, that's kind of in your world or what have you, but it'd be good to kind of get a sub team there and talk through that for sure. But right now it's been Clint and crew.
Did it plan to purge the store of a lot of obsolete products, a lot of druff?
Yeah, I mean, so certainly there is no shortage of companies to buy, right? And I find that a lot of these companies, some of them are failing, and some of them are just in a state that perhaps there was some wrong decision being made. And DNN was a good example, right? When we bought it, it was not growing, right? And but I don't believe that that is because of the underlying platform being bad per se. I believe that there was some questionable decisions and what have you made by the previous folks and what have you. So so a lot of these companies are that way, and some of the other ones are actually like business apps, for example, was growing when we bought it, and it's still growing. But that particular case, it was an entrepreneur that had been doing it since college, and he grew it to whatever a $6 million business I think it was, and he was growing at 25%, but in order for him to have an exit, he needed to be growing at a triple-digit rate. So there was no exit on his side of the world. So a lot of times we'll pay one times revenue for these. So he got a big check. And he's like, right, I'm good, and then we kind of take it over from there. So it really depends. But any given time, we'll have 400 or 500 different bids out for companies, and then we'll go through that. And then obviously it's got to be at the right price and what have you. But it also has to be in a space that that I think could be horizontal in nature. Not all of them will be, because I'll still buy stuff even if it's not true horizontal. But it has to be something that is, something that I believe is going to be around for the next 10 years, right? Because I don't sell any of these companies. I'm not like a private equity firm that leverages that and tries to find a buyer. It's like I need that as part of my portfolio, and then I need to be able to run them great for the next decade, right? So if I feel like they're going to die because they're in some weird space, then it's not worth it. Other questions? Sean?
I have a question. So I think that the subscription model has a lot of benefit, and so I understand why it's going in this direction. I understand the advantages of it. The example that you gave of Amazon, so when you purchase an Amazon Prime subscription, there's like a publicly stated price for it that everyone knows. It's like you said, $120 a year.
Yep.
Netflix, it's like $10 or $12 a month.
Yep.
So are you going to move in that model with DNN or Evoke pricing as well? Well, I guess it's not specifically Evoke pricing, it's DNN Prime pricing.
Mm-hmm.
So is there going to be sort of a publicly stated price for it? And will that price stay relatively stable? Because that's the other part of a subscription business that makes them successful, is you can trust that that price is going to stay fairly constant, right?
Yep. Yeah. No, that's a great question, and one that we're grappling with right now. And so I don't have. I'll give you the answer it is right now and what we're considering. So today it's if you are an Evoke customer paying X dollars, everything is included in that X dollars, right? And therefore you just continue to pay what you're paying, and it's a customer retention inside of the world. But there's a good argument that says, okay, once you grow the portfolio to a certain amount, then should people just subscribe to the store in aggregate? So it's not necessarily one product anymore, it's the store in aggregate. And so I believe that we will actually get to that point, right? And I don't know whatever that number is or whatever else it may be, is obviously based on the value of that. But I believe that we will get to that point at some point. And then at that point, we'll have to look at, okay, what do you do with the existing customers, right? Do you transition them to this new one pricing model? But a lot of the times, the average selling prices within the different companies are very different, right? Your typical Kayako customer is whatever, $5,000 a year, right? Your typical SLI customer is $50,000 a year, right? So what pricing do you choose then in the the Netflix model? So we don't have a good answer for that yet. So in the near term, we're just going to stick to. Right, this is a retention, this isn't a new customer acquisition model, which would be kind of that piece. This is a retention model. And so just continue to pay what you're paying, and then we'll do what you do. But I believe that if it is an asset, even more of an asset if you drive customers to it. So something we have to do and figure out at some point. Other questions? Yep.
Yeah. Is there any kind of a blueprint if, let's say, I've got an application I want to put in your offer, your Prime, DNN Prime offer? Is there a kind of a blueprint which tells me how I need to prepare it for being available in your offer?
Well, the way that it's set up right now is we have to buy you. so there's definitely a blueprint on that side.
You can talk about it.
And if anyone's interested in that, certainly we can talk through that. But we buy, B2B enterprise software companies primarily, roughly in that $5 to $10 million range. Sometimes we go bigger than that, but roughly it's in that range. And again, it's got to be in spaces that I believe is going to be around for the next decade or so. So that's what we kind of look at, and then we look at the purchase price is based on obviously your retention and what have you. Now, you raised another interesting point is I'm looking at, well, can I accelerate my way to a bigger app store or a portfolio by allowing third-party folks to actually contribute inside of that? And then, and what would that model look like? And kind of a similar thing I'm talking with Sean is we haven't quite figured that out yet. But I'm trying to figure out, is there a model where I can actually pay you to be a part of that? Can I give you $1 million a year, for example, to be a part of this, this app store, because I'm able to monetize it, through customer retention and things like that, right? So I'm trying to figure that out because I can dramatically increase, the pace, because even at, what I'm trying to race to of 1 a week to 2 a week, right? There's still, a path of number of companies there versus like being able to get thousands of people in there, right? So trying to figure that piece out. So I guess TBD, but if I can crack the revenue model, because again, I don't, and maybe at some point it is so valuable that you want to be on it and I pay you or something, or where you pay me or something on it. But I believe it's even better if I'm like, I'll get more and better people if I can pay you and guarantee you a certain amount of money per year. I mean, much like Netflix does, right? I mean, they pay $6 billion a year in their content, right? So basically, you are a content provider at that point in time. So what can I pay you? And is it a per use basis or something like that, right? So I'm looking at that, but I don't haven't quite got that figured out yet.
No blueprint yet.
Yeah, no, not yet. Well, hopefully I will. So sometime, that's one of the things I'm trying to think about in the second half of this year. I'm trying to figure out again, how do we make the acquisition model more seamless and that data structure that I talked about, but then how do I even accelerate that further? Because acquiring companies and all that, it takes time. And honestly, there's a bunch of other, how do you actually run the companies? You have to run the companies well afterwards, right? So those are the two pieces that I'm thinking about right now. But I'd much rather have it the way that you talked about.
Okay.
All right. Other questions? Yep.
One of the other success factors of Spotify is because it's cheap. I mean, it used to buy 1 CD a month, which is a couple of, maybe €30 or something. So it was a no-brainer for me to switch to Spotify. I mean, if I now look at, for instance, business apps, I need about 10 customers to have the revenue to pay the fee, monthly fee. So I think is there still work, was a little bit of talk about pricing, of course. So when do you expect to tell more about that?
I guess I'd have to get a clarification on your question. Like today, you get all that stuff for free, right? So you're actually not paying for business apps. So if you wanted to deploy business apps onto your website, you don't have to pay anything else for that. That's just included, right? So most of our customer discussions are actually the other way around, where we actually go to them and say, hey, let's take a look at all the software that you're paying, and let's go pick things that can dramatically reduce your total cost, because now it's just included as part of your DNN price, right? And then they're excited to talk about that, and and therefore, even like Steiner Tractor, I don't know if that's one of your guys' customer. I was chatting with them the other day because they were DNN house, right? Like they're like, great, awesome. Let me use the SLI in search, because I'm paying, whatever it is. I think it was like $300,000 a year in this other search provider, right? Now I can use it for free. That's awesome, right? Because there's no amount of pricing discount that I could have given them on DNN to make up $300,000, right? So this is literally a case where if I can give them enough software, literally it's like, they're like getting, DNN for free. I'm almost like paying them. Right, so, and therefore I'm also able to raise prices on it. That's a different topic, but they're able to accept the price increases because I'm dramatically reducing the cost from someone else. So, therefore my pricing is usually the other way around. So I'm happy to chat further about, kind of what you're thinking there. But but it's usually not more expensive. All right, I think my time is up, so thank you very much, everyone. And,